Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. The SEC has shown a flagrant disregard for investor protection, certainly as it pertains to protecting XRP investors. They've caused tremendous harm, as we are well aware, when they went after Ripple without providing sufficient clarity surrounding the current state of XRP, regardless of how Ripple previously sold XRP. By not making sure that there's sufficient clarity, they caused additional uncertainty and confusion, and it resulted in the obliteration of billions of dollars of investments in XRP. And so this is idiocy on parade, effectively. And they do not care about the human toll. They seriously do not. And so somebody who's been taking the SEC to task ever since this all got going on back in December of last year is Rosalind Layton, and she's been writing for Forbes, and this may be, I don't know, maybe the fifth or sixth article that she's written on this topic, and she really does a fantastic job taking the SEC to task, and I've covered every single one of her other articles on my channel here, and so I came across this one that was just published a couple days ago, and I wanted to go ahead and run through it. Now, each of the other times I'd cover one of her articles, I had read it in its entirety first, and so basically what would happen is I'd read it, and then I'd basically cover it in its entirety again, so I'm like, well, maybe I don't need to do it, because like, here's the deal. Like, she puts out fantastic stuff. I already know that. And I actually did read the first third of this, but that's it. So I know I want to cover this for sure. You're going to find it very interesting. And so the second, like, I don't know, or more like, yeah, probably about 2/3 of it, the last 2/3 of it, I haven't read yet. So we'll get to experience this together here. But before I go further, I do want to be clear, I don't have a legal or financial background of any kind. I am not offering legal or financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who makes YouTube videos because it's a fun hobby. That's all that's going on here, though, damn it. And so this article is actually a little bit different because it's basically an interview, and there are just a handful of questions. But here's the piece. The piece's title from Forbes. Former financial regulator on SEC versus Ripple. Forget the fanfare. Focus on evaluation. The Security Exchange Commission's lawsuit against the online payment protocol and global exchange network Ripple Labs may seem like a new development, but U.S. financial regulators frequently find themselves behind the curve on technology. According to fintech futurist Thomas P. Vartanian, the case is a replay of the money market mutual funds of the 1980s, which initially seemed to defy definitive categorization as either money, deposits, securities, or commodities, something that often happens when a new product hits the market and transcends the legal boundaries that Congress previously established. Right, so pause there already, and this is something that I've been talking about on my channel for the entirety of the time I've been running it. Even before this lawsuit, SEC going after Ripple, I said, look, there is not sufficient regulatory clarity because the SEC is not accounting for these cryptocurrencies that can go from centralized to decentralized and vice versa. Because the deal is, and fine, they recognize like something can go from being a security to not a security. Like even without crypto, I'll acknowledge that. But the problem here, the reason there's not sufficient clarity, is because there's this idea of a common enterprise resulting in something be sufficiently centralized or decentralized to argue one way or the other, and they have not made it clear what threshold must be met for something to be sufficiently decentralized so that there is no longer considered to be a common enterprise, which is one of the prongs of the Howey test, which is how you're supposed to come to the conclusion of whether or not something is being sold as a security or not. But there isn't clarity there. 100% unquestionably true, that is the case. Anyway, the piece continues here, though. Vartanian predicts the future of finance by studying the past. His new book, 200 Years of American Financial Panics, Crashes, Recessions, Depressions, and the Technology That Will Change It All, details the role of regulation in creating financial crises. He experienced many crises firsthand as a regulator, serving the Carter administration during a period of stagflation at the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, and later in the Reagan administration as general counsel of the Federal Home Loan Bank Board and the FSLIC, when he oversaw the rationalization of hundreds of failed institutions during the savings and loan crisis. In addition to his career of writing and teaching about financial law and technology, he is launching the Financial Technology Regulation and Cybersecurity Center to explore information technology threats to America's critical financial infrastructure. And so Vartanian weighs in below on SEC versus Ripple, the government's infatuation with technology and its failure to achieve smart regulation. So suffice it to say, he's got some experience career-wise and is perfectly suited to be talking specifically on this topic. And you'll see as we get into this, and again, I just read maybe the first third or so of this interview, he's not mincing words. And he highlights exactly what I stated at the beginning of the video, which is that the SEC is harming investors and the SEC is pretending like they're helping us, which is kind of repulsive to me. So here's the question first from Rosalind Layton. What are your thoughts on SEC versus Ripple? And Vartanian responded as follows. SEC versus Ripple is tangible evidence that governmental infatuation with technology is evolving beyond the mesmerizing effect that the new technological products often enjoy. The SEC's action suggests it is time to blow past the fanfare and get down to a rigorous evaluation of the fundamental financial characteristics of crypto products. When such new products like crypto assets begin to attract a critical mass of users, administrative regulation is there to burrow into the weeds and either trigger congressional action, categorize the product according to current rules, or change the boundaries to ensure market stability and competitive fairness. And then Rosalind says or no, this isn't Rosalind yet, or maybe it is the question. I think this is from Rosalind. In the Ripple case, the SEC claims it is pursuing consumer protection, but it has definitively harmed consumers, as the class action lawsuit from 18,000 XRP holders against the SEC attests. The sudden SEC action to declare Ripple a security has precipitated the delisting of XRP on many currency exchanges, causing the value of XRP to plummet. The irony is that we have tons of laws and regulators for financial services, but they say little about cryptocurrency. The emergence of cryptocurrency has led to a mad dash by no less than 8 regulators asserting jurisdiction over the technology, with little guidance, much less statute, from Congress. What's to stop other regulatory agencies from running roughshod over any new financial technology? And that's an excellent question. I'll share with you Vartanian's response in a moment. But I just want to highlight, this is undeniably true. If you've been following my channel, you may have seen a couple of videos where I was actually highlighting recent comments from a gentleman who is a CFTC commissioner who say, no, the SEC does not have any sort of jurisdictional power specifically over cryptocurrencies. Said that this would be the CFTC's purview. It's like they're all fighting each other for the power here, and really what you need is Congress to make it super duper clear. But we haven't even seen that from Congress, and so you've got all of these government agencies just punching each other in the face and trying to take what isn't theirs necessarily. And so in the case of cryptocurrencies, I'll tell you what, as far as who should regulate it, look, I would argue CFTC for a lot of these cryptocurrencies before I'd ever say the SEC. But it is also true, of course, that anything can be sold as a security. Gold could be sold as a security. Bitcoin could be. Oranges could be. Just pick anything. Pick your precious metal. It doesn't matter. Anything can be packaged in such a way that it satisfies the Howey test, meaning it's an infringement. But if you're talking about the underlying asset itself, that should not by default be under the purview of the SEC. That just doesn't make any damn sense. So anyway, Vartanian responded with the following. Again, the question was, what's to stop other regulatory agencies from running roughshod over any new financial technology? And Vartanian wrote, or said, for starters, the U.S. is the only country that has a dual system of banking that has hundreds of state and federal regulators bumping into each other and fighting over jurisdiction. That is not the whole story, but the redundancy and inefficiency in the system is something we need to improve. There have been efforts to consolidate prudential regulation since the inception of the Federal Reserve in 1913. 17 bills have introduced in Congress proposing reorganization structures for prudential regulation, and over 20 government commissions or initiatives that evaluated and developed reorganization proposals. I participated in the Vice President's Task Group on Financial Services Regulation, which began in 1982 and produced a compendium of recommendations to move toward functional regulation of activities. If those recommendations had been adopted, we likely would have avoided much of the pain of the subprime meltdown in 2008, triggered by risk hiding in plain sight of the unregulated parts of the financial markets. With technology dominating the financial landscape, now is the time to regulate financial activities rather than just banks. Interesting point of view. As far as the housing meltdown, doesn't anybody think that it's a problem that people were given loans that shouldn't have qualified for loans? Like, does anybody else think that might have been a problem, maybe a driving factor, in that banks, were actually, you could actually be financially penalized for not giving out loans to certain people that actually could not afford them? I'll just leave it there, but I'd say that's a factor, right? And then Roslyn asks the following: what is your take on what happened to cryptocurrency in the recent infrastructure bill process? The notion that any crypto broker must report to the IRS is concerning. Particularly, was this could sweep up unrelated actors like traders who have no customers or ISPs facilitating internet transmissions. This just seems like yet another example of regulation by enforcement without clear congressional action. Yeah, so let me pause there. The biggest problem, specifically as it would pertain to XRP, is that, well, actually, let me say this first. As far as the infrastructure bill and them throwing crypto in it, crypto has nothing to do with infrastructure. That's ridiculous. But that's what politicians do. They want their pet projects in there. They want to it's just a money grab. So I got all that. But it did make it so that pretty much every cryptocurrency on the planet, if you're running a validator or node in the United States for any platform, you're in trouble. So then there was an amendment. There are a couple of different opposing amendments. One of them protected just Bitcoin, and then once they got some really negative feedback, they thought they fixed the problem. Then they protected proof of stake. First they protected Bitcoin, but it was anything that utilized proof of work. So Bitcoin was protected, then Ethereum was protected, and no other consensus algorithm was protected. So that means the XRP ledger itself, if you're running a node in the United States, you're going to have to meet reporting requirements that you literally can't, because you don't have customers or anything like that. You're not able to acquire information, from people that are transacting on the XRP ledger. And so it's these people, they don't understand the damn technology, but they sure as hell are regulating it. Isn't that fun? And I say regulation, it's more just like a clamp down and a money grab. That's what it was specifically. And so Vartanian said the following on this: reporting is the beginning point for regulatory assessment and supervision, but when reporting and the data that it sought is not well defined, it runs the risk of covering too many entities and providing too much irrelevant and distracting information. This battle in the infrastructure bill about who a crypto broker might be is very similar to other important forms of oversight that have been implemented. For example, after 2008 crisis, when Congress and the regulators sought to regulate securitizers under the Mortgage-Backed Securities Risk Retention Rule in the Dodd-Frank Act, the definition originally covered almost everyone who touched a MBS, which would have made the process less effective and gummed up markets. See, doesn't this just sound like typical government behavior? Doesn't it? Seriously, it's like, take action and then find out what the consequences are later. That's government for you. That's exactly what's happening. And again here with crypto. Anyway, Vartanian continues. Similarly, reporting crypto transactions needs to avoid features of reporting transactions for money laundering control purposes that result in the collection of historic data when the challenge is to identify violations in real time. Effective supervisory and data collection systems need to be as focused as possible to be effective. Otherwise, they inevitably overwhelm regulators with too much data. But the key point is that all of these systems need to be dragged into the 21st century and augmented by the most sophisticated forms of technology and artificial intelligence so they can be as effective as possible. Technology will help regulators get at the substance of the problem rather than merely collect data, identify process violations, and create government revenue. Yeah, exactly. So I share this perspective. Yeah, I think he's pretty well nailing it there. And this is just how government acts. So I get it. It's not like, I'm not saying there shouldn't be any oversight. I'm not one of those crazy Bitcoin anarchy guys. Like, there are people that mindset, like no banks, no government interaction whatsoever. Although I will say this, even though that was some of the earliest messaging from some of the more fringe individuals in crypto in the earliest days, I will say this. As soon as banks had jumped on board, like JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs, apparently that's all fine. Then they don't completely hate the banks. They're praising the adoption once that happens. So a little hypocritical from some of these people. But no, I don't look at it that way. Like, of course, there should be oversight. The problem is, it's not clear who should be overseeing what. And even if it is supposed to be the SEC, which I would dispute that they're the default to go to for everything crypto, even if that were the case, damn, they sure as hell are not providing specifics here. They just aren't. And so then Rosling said this, your book's provocative thesis is that regulation itself, or misguided or misapplied regulation as it were, has caused financial crisis. Explain that. And here's what he said. Congress seems to believe that the more regulation, the safer the system is. It is the redundancy and lack of what I call smart regulation through the enactment of law after law that is creating the context for financial crises to grow. The problem is that there was very little research and analysis of the role that government policy has played in creating or facilitating financial crises. That is partly why I wrote my book, 200 Years of American Financial Panics. Most books and papers focus on bankers, market speculation, and robber barons. While those are indeed factors in every crisis, they are often inflamed or enabled by government policies such as protective tariffs, housing incentives, rate controls, and segmented oversight. Why is it that the United States has the most comprehensive regulatory system, the most powerful central bank, but the greatest number of financial disasters of every industrialized country in the world but one? We are doing something wrong. Consider Canada, which has a more scaled-down, streamlined regulatory system, only a handful of big banks, but has had only 2 financial disasters in the last 2 centuries to the United States 10. Yeah, so I would just blame it on incompetency. Broadly speaking, certainly incompetency. And we're witnessing this in real time. Isn't it a good time out here? And then Roslin said the following: what can be done to reform the morass of financial regulation and duplicative agencies so that they actually achieve their purported goals? And Vartanian responded with the following: I propose a multi-step reformation of financial regulation to improve its effectiveness, efficiency, and ability to protect consumers and markets. Every step is critical. Fundamentally, we need to reduce the impact of partisan politics on our economics if we really want the system to work better. And that could mean the following. Then he's got this list of 6 things. Number 1, consolidate federal financial regulators like FDIC, OCC, FRB, SEC, FHFA, NCUA, and CFTC into one federal financial services commission. Man. Okay, so that would be interesting. Look, not going to pretend like there isn't overlap. There is some overlap, but my gosh, some of the functions are markedly different. I don't have an opinion on that. I need to hear an opposing viewpoint to that before I could determine whether or not that actually seems to make sense. I guess just on the surface, it struck me in such a way that I feel a little skeptical of the idea, but I'm willing to be persuaded there. It's just I'm looking at some of the things that's like the CFTC and the SEC are doing. It's like you can keep those things separate. And I'm actually a fan of the way that, in a general sense, our country, the United States, was set up from inception, which is, having separation of powers in general. And so, not that I want an infinite number of government bureaucrats regulating various things, but separating some of that power doesn't seem necessarily like the worst idea on the planet. It's more so, in practice, there are a bunch of incompetent politicians that are wrecking everything, right? And then they'll blame it on whatever they want to blame it on. And then number 2 here, remove bank supervision from the FRB and the FDIC, leaving them with receivership and monetary control responsibilities, respectively. Number 3, reform the dual system of regulation and harmonize state and federal oversight to eliminate redundancies and intramural squabbles in financial regulation. Number 4, revamp the political side of the ledger to merge the Senate and House committees to form a nonpartisan committee with a highly paid professional staff. Number 5, increase the compensation of financial regulators to market rates, so ensure the highest quality personnel are hired and maintained. And number 6, enhance regulatory resources with the most sophisticated forms of technology to supervise, on a real-time and more predictive basis. See, here's the thing. I'm not saying that necessarily any of these are horrendous ideas off the top, but like, what are you going to do to change the human behavior that is actually the fundamental problem of these issues? Let's like people making stupid decisions and then them not being held accountable. I mean, because here's the thing, like even if you consolidate and you don't have as many bureaucrats, well, what about the ones that remain? Are they going to stop being idiot sticks? Like, show me what's going to stop that. That's the thing. Anyway, and then says, if we can achieve some facsimile of these steps, we will build a better regulatory structure which will save trillions just by avoiding and reducing the impact of future financial crises. And then Roslin asks, who will be the drivers of the needed reforms? And then he responds with the following. That this wraps up the piece. He says, smart players in the market should understand that without a better and more modern form of financial regulation, everyone loses. If we don't realize this, countries like China certainly do. The private sector must be the driver of any financial reform. That is the only way that it will get the attention of Congress. And while everyone's investment in the status quo is a powerful force of inertia, the overwhelming impact that technology is having on financial services and the security of our money is the key driver that should wake everyone up. Fintech companies, artificial intelligence, cloud and quantum computing, blockchain applications, non-sciences, and synthetic biology are dramatically changing the nature of financial products and how they're delivered. They will also impact the safety and security of everyone's money if we do not change the risk/reward ratio by keying the rewards for technological innovation to the production of better software, hardware, networks, and enforcement of cyberspace insecurity. So, interesting topic of conversation here, especially as it pertains to Ripple and the SEC going after them and just harming an insane number of XRP holders. Like, there's a way to make all of this work, but it's just with government, it's just like it's extremely messier. Like, it's extremely messy and much messier than it should be to get to a reasonable conclusion. But here we are. You guys let me know what you think in the comment section below. I am not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.